Welcome to our first edition of Labor TV, sponsored by the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Labor Council. And with us today we have myself, Kyle Mackey. I'm the president of the Cowlitz-Wahkiakum Labor Council, and Rick Von Rock, who's a retired member of AWPPW.
Correct, Local 153.
153. And Dan?
Dan Woods from Local 747C, Kalama Chemical.
All right. Today we're going to be going over a couple things. Boeing, the Boeing controversy and the vote they just had up there in the Seattle area with 35,000 machinists that it affected, and labor in general on that. We're also going to talk about minimum wage and the things that are going on across the country with minimum wage, from Seattle to Washington, D.C., everywhere. First of all, let's start talking about Boeing. Boeing workers just had a vote. They had 2 years left on their contract, and the state legislature and Boeing officials asked the workers to vote to secure labor peace for the next, 10 years, Rick? 9 years. And to do that, they were asked to give up their defined benefit pensions. They gave up some other language, but the pensions was the biggest thing.
Pension and healthcare cost.
Yeah. On top of that, the state legislature gave Boeing $8.7 billion in tax breaks over the next 40 years or so.
Yes.
Some of the state reps have spoke out recently. One of them notably was Chris Rakedahl, and he actually called it economic extortion. Kind of blunt term on how it all went down and being pushed around from a company that's profiting greatly in recent times, and they have a lot of orders to be filled. Do you have anything to add on that, Rick?
Yeah, I do. I mean, as we look at what has happened to Boeing here, their future lifestyle, especially when they retire, will be totally different now, a big change. And this was caused by this vote that kind of pushed them in a position that caused them to either perhaps keep the jobs here in Washington or lose the jobs. So I think this was a very sad way of getting something accomplished by both Boeing Company and our political candidates in the state of Washington.
Yeah, I personally, I think, just from my opinion, that politics in the state are going to be affected greatly by what went down, and the things that how the governor handled the whole thing and the words he used. It just seemed kind of disrespectful to, he didn't exactly respect the vote the first time around from the machinists. So the governor and the other legislators pushed for a second vote to do it all over again with just minor changes. And it's quite honestly, it's pretty disgusting to me how it all went down, but it just barely passed. And I guess we have to move forward together, and hopefully we'll keep these jobs here in Washington State, and it'll be a good thing. Dan, did you want to weigh in on how you feel about Boeing?
Well, one of the things that I see happen in the states and in the government is that as we, as workers, end up getting kind of an ultimatum, if you would, it's either take it or you're gone. And I think that we're stepping backwards in time, because that's what a lot of the labor issues that we had prior to were people saying, like it or go down the road. And I hear it today, even in our community, that if you don't like it, move down the road and try to find another job. So I think there's a lot of interest in politics if we don't step up to the bat and say, enough's enough. We've drawn a line in the sand. I can't live on $10 an hour or $5 an hour. When we look at the whole perspective that we're looking at, it becomes that we become beggars for our jobs, if you would.
I think more often than not, it comes down to outsourcing, either outsourcing to another state, particularly right-to-work states that work for less wages and less benefits, or a different country like China, India, these growing countries with this huge population that are willing to work for sometimes next to nothing, and they don't have anywhere near the standards that we do. And it's hard to find a way to fight that for the long term, for the short term. What do you think this is going to do to school funding, Rick?
Well, I certainly think it's going to cause a problem. I mean, it's been difficult of late to fund the schools, and we realize many of the districts have been going through difficult negotiation periods. So I think as tax breaks are given to corporations, there will be less revenue available to take care of the needs of the schools. And one of the most important things I think we as individuals have are saying that our children are educated. And if it's causing a problem to educate our children because we don't have the necessary funding, then I can see a loss in our school districts.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, I guess that about covers Boeing. One of the biggest things that I've learned in the last couple of years, and labor has really honed in on lately, is the term of income inequality. And I think that really sums up what's wrong with our country right now. Trickle-down economics, giving tax breaks and incentives and all these give-outs to corporations, and hoping that the money will filter down and that jobs will come through and that it'll create more jobs. We've been trying this for the last 30 years, and it seems like it's not working out. The stock market's at an all-time high. The CEO to average worker pay ratio in the United States is 475 to 1, according to a lot of studies. Which brings us to the battle on minimum wage. That's a big one. All across the country right now, we've seen fast food workers going on strike in major cities. We've seen actions at Walmart. We always pick on Walmart because there's so many things to pick on. I mean, there's so many things that place does wrong, but the main thing that Walmart gets picked on is because their family, the owners of Walmart, control the same amount of wealth as 42% of the entire country. 42% of Americans have the same wealth as the Walmart heirs. Now, that's kind of the opposite of socialism. I mean, wouldn't you say, Rick?
Oh, absolutely. As we look at Walmart and what they do and what it costs us as average citizens, which comes out of our pocket. As we look at the Walmart and they pay whatever the minimum wage is in the state that they're in. And by doing so, their employees have to be subsidized in housing, food stamps, medical care, and they not only have to be subsidize this, but Walmart actually encourages their workers and help them sign up for their various programs that are available because they are not receiving a family wage to take care of their families. And that is totally, outrageous.
Yeah, a living wage. And, the Daily News, our friends at the Daily News, we sometimes disagree strongly with the language they use, and they just had an article recently on the rise in minimum wage in Washington State. It's gone up to $9.32 an hour.
I believe
is that
so.
Right? And that obviously affects small business the most, and I think that's where I try to find ways and educate myself on how it's going to affect them and how we can move forward, because even though it's always going to affect small businesses, in the big picture, it's these huge corporations that are refusing to pay a livable wage when they're making huge amounts of profit. And the minimum wage is a good way to step forward and fight that income inequality.
I think if we look at, put it on paper, you know, at $10 an hour, everybody works in the United States. If you work a 40-hour work week, you work 2,080 hours a year. That's just what you work. $10 an hour, that's less than $21,000 a year, minus your Social Security, your anything the government takes back from you. You're probably going to end up with about $1,500 a month to raise your family on.
Mm-hmm.
And being that I've got 5 children, I can tell you, it's tough. You always say, what's most important to me? And I think that that's one of the things that this economics that we've been living in has had adverse effect on people. We're having to decide a lot of times, do I buy food or do I keep my medicine? Do I take my child to the dentist, or do I quit driving my car so I can't get to work?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of these types of things, if we put them on paper with, say, a $10 an hour minimum wage, you're looking at $20,800 a year,
Mm-hmm.
minus all the things that come out from Social Security to unemployment, things like this. You're going to end up with somewhere around $1,200 to $1,500 a month to raise your family on.
And that's based on a 40-hour week.
40-hour week.
Now, who's working a 40-hour week?
Not many, not many. In fact, as you go out and you go into the various places, and I've talked to some of the people that are on minimum wage and ask them how many hours a week do they work, and most of them work under 30, 28 hours, 24 hours, 20 hours. And so you got to compound what it would have been if you were working the 2,080 hour a year, and you may have to break that down at least a third to half. So instead of making that $1,500 after everything's taken out, you're down maybe to $750 or $800. And have you tried to live on that? No, you can't. That's why those that are making a little more are having to help subsidize people that are making less, due to the fact that, as Kyle mentioned, the big corporations aren't willing to do their fair share and provide a living wage for their workers, knowing that they can.
Now, Rick, do you think that's something new that employers, maybe people like to blame Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, rather, on the amount of hours an employer is giving their employees? Do you think it's something new, or have they always been doing that?
You know, it's not new, and I think some of the differences as we look at minimum wage, we have to look at the type of people that are working on minimum wage. It used to be that it was teenagers in school. That was it. And I had the opportunity to talk in a restaurant I went into that's a big family chain, and I asked how many people do they have working there. They told me they had, close to 50 people, and I asked how many teenagers do you have working there. They said two that were under 18. So this misconception that only teenagers that are in school are working minimum wage is very, very wrong. People have to look and see the type of people that are serving them, whether it's in a restaurant, whether it's in a clothing store, or whether it's in a furniture store, anything like that. These people are working under 40 hours, they are working on minimum wage, and they are not teenagers.
So I have here an article from Time magazine. It says that President Obama is heading towards the decision that he would like to raise the minimum wage to $10.10 an hour. And that would lift 4.6 million people out of poverty in the country. But that's if they're working 40 hours a week. I have another one here that says, from the Center for Economic and Policy Research, the minimum wage should have reached $21.72 an hour if it kept up with worker productivity. If the minimum wage had kept up with inflation, it should be $10.52 an hour. So, something's got to change to fix the gross income inequality in this country. And I think the minimum wage is a good way to go about it, at least for a start.
I know, I'm getting up there in years, and I'm looking at retiring, and I look at how many people are quite a bit older than I am that are still having to work. That for circumstances, some within their control, some without their control, have been forced to work into their 70s, 80s, which then again, as you said, we look at the people that are serving us and stuff. Doesn't that cause us not to be able to hire younger people because the older people can't afford to live?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's a top and a bottom situation. If we take the worst scenarios, we look at the people that are stuck in that middle section that haven't really been able to get ahead, and now they're retiring, so we're starting to pull the rug out of from under a lot of people. We can't rely on the government, obviously, to cure all our ills, if you would. Mm-hmm. But we do need to be able to put something away for a rainy day. Like you said, $700 a month, that's not gonna make it.
Yeah, my biggest beef is the perception that these jobs are only being filled by kids and people just getting into the workforce, and that's who's doing these jobs. But with outsourcing and automation, there's less and less jobs in the country, and there's more and more of these entry-level jobs that, Walmart, fast food, retail, there's more and more of these jobs, and there's less and less of the higher paying jobs. So Rick, do you know what's going on up there in SeaTac with the minimum wage law that just passed?
Yes, it's kind of a shamble right now because the Port Authority up there is fighting this. It's been voted on by the citizens of SeaTac that they get this increase in the minimum wage to the new $15.50, or $15 an hour rather. And now the Port Authority up there feels that certain groups should be excluded, taking it upon themselves, and it's getting ready to go to court to get this taken care of. But the issue now is, how can it happen that when something is voted on a ballot, that some other agency can all of a sudden decide that the people were wrong, that they should not have had this to vote on?
The Port District.
The Port District, correct.
Well, I'm a port guy. I mean, shouldn't the ports, I'm a longshoreman. I like the Port of Longview, and they have their own government section set up. And shouldn't they be allowed to say that they make the call and the voters don't matter,
Absolutely not. It gets down to the point where people make a decision and it should be kept. And I understand that sometimes there are issues that come up and things need to be corrected, but when those things come up, just like Obamacare, you don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. So if there's things that need to be corrected, yeah, let's work at correcting them, but not ignore what the people voted for.
Yeah, I was just playing devil's advocate. I think that the people's vote should definitely trump the port commissioner's district and their own section. I think the people should have the voice, especially on a vote like that. That's also being fought hard by Alaska Airlines, I think, is the top contributor to that battle. Hopefully it works itself out in court, and those are a lot of jobs that are hotel workers and what other kind of jobs are affected up there?
No, you got the ones that are giving out the tickets, the ones that are taking your baggage. Mm-hmm. Everyone, within the airline industry itself could adversely be affected by this decision. And just like you said, Alaska Airline is one of the ones that are fighting it, just so they don't have to pay as much as they need to, so their people could make a family wage job.
Yeah, these are a lot of highly profitable jobs that aren't in danger of leaving. These are jobs that are there to stay. I think that it's a good example of where you should be paying $15 an hour for sure, a livable wage.
I think also beyond that scope of just those people it's affecting communities. It affects the whole gamut of people that are around, the retailers that you talk about. I can't go to your store to buy your goods. I can't go take my kids out to eat at your restaurant. It's not just, I mean, if we look at the small package, it is one leg of the elephant, if you would. But if you look at the whole elephant, you're going to have people from car parkers to gas attendants to people in the community that are out there trying to better their community. Are all going to be affected by whatever happens through these votes.
And then there's the city of Seattle, the newly elected mayor and I think the first time ever a socialist candidate was elected to the city council up there. They're working on a $15 an hour minimum wage the mayor just issued an executive order for a $15 minimum wage for all city workers.
All city employees.
And he has a panel in place to investigate how to go about raising the minimum wage for all the other workers in the city as well. What do you think about that?
You know, I'm totally with this gentleman, definitely. And I was surprised that the cost to Seattle, and Seattle is a huge, huge city, is only going to be an extra $700,000, according to the newspaper. So to be able to raise those people up, and he was saying this is the right thing to do, I'm totally in line with him. And I think more cities, even our local cities, should think about doing things like that for their employees. For whatever employees are making less than $15 an hour, I would encourage Longview, Kelso, Castle Rock, Kalama, all the ones within our area here, to take that in mind and see what you can do to help your city employees out that are taking care of all the citizens.
Now, what do you think it does to small businesses in Seattle, particularly? How do you think a $15 an hour wage would affect a small business in the city of Seattle, a big city where the cost of living is huge? Should it even matter, or do you think it's going to make those businesses go under?
No, I don't. And that's been the story for years. They always say, we're going to lose out here. We're going to lose out. And the reality is, if people are making more, they're going to be spending more in your establishment. If you have to raise the prices a little better, well, I'm making $15 an hour now, so I can afford to pay a little more. And I think most citizens would realize that. If we're all making a little more, we can spend a little more, we can pay a little more. So the business would benefit, the employee would benefit, the city would benefit by the tax revenue, and everyone benefits. It's a just win-win situation.
All right. Dan, you got anything
Well, I
else?
think that kind of goes along with what I was saying. If I can't afford to go eat at your establishment, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect your way of life, your kids' education, and this trickling down effect can also trickle up by bringing up the bottom base to where we can all afford a little bit more is more reliable than to cut the bottom shelf and say, hey, here's where we're cutting people off. These people are going to fall through the cracks anyway, so let's just cut them off. And that's not the way we need to do in America.
No.
We need to stand up, pick up the base, because it's like a tree. You don't have a base on your tree, no matter how big that tree gets, that tree's going to topple over. Mm-hmm. And we don't want that to happen. We want to grow it from the base up in order to give a substantial base to the whole community rather than just one section. I think that's exactly what you're bringing up.
Absolutely.
All right, let's go ahead and switch gears now, and let's talk about community involvement. I know one of my biggest things when I became president of Labor Council was to try to find ways to reinvest, or not reinvest, but reconnect with the community of Longview, Kelso, Cowlitz County, Wahkiakum County, and get labor's message out there, what we're up to, what we're all about. I know that community involvement with charity work and things like that is a great way to reconnect, get ourselves out there, get involved. I've been involved with United Way. My local union, ILWU, has created what's called a Community Action Committee about 3 years ago, and we do several programs. Some of our favorites are the Community House, serving dinner there. We help out with the Salvation Army at Christmas time. We set up their warehouse. We tear it down, we deliver food for Meals on Wheels. What are the chemical workers up to?
Well, Emerald Performance Material, I call it Kalama Chemical because that's basically what everybody knows it by. But in the last, I've been a member down there for over 25 years. And every year for the last 25 years, we've taken out of our general fund to use it in different projects. For instance, this year we've put $250 to the fish. $250 to the Helping Hands. We also have started this is our second year in it, but we had a Christmas drive of we have 74 union members down there, and those 74 members, we raised $2,130 from the 71 members. What happened there was we went to Fred Meyer and said, look, you guys are a union type business, we'd like to support you. And we took that money in and they supported us by giving us every discount. I even got a senior discount, believe it or not. But we also work somewhat with the company. There are my whole job during Christmas, I've had it down real well. I buy socks. And Fred Meyer says socks. Christmas time, half price. My only job is go buy the socks for my grandkids' kids, and that adds up to quite a bit. Well, we went over to hit the company up and the union, and each of us donated $100 a piece. Well, by the time you buy half-price socks, that's $400 worth of socks, which we donated to the Salvation Army because that's what they said they needed. We also have a lot of people go out ringing bells for the Salvation Army. We try to get involved with different programs in order to benefit the myth that all we are is trying to make money for the unions. I don't make any money most of our equipment is volunteer. I don't get paid for doing the work I do. You don't get paid for the work you do. But that's what most people are trying to convey, is that's what we are, is to some money manufacturing machine where if you think of unions, I think of people united, from people that are unemployed to people that have great jobs. We need to move the whole group along. And I think that's what the union's all about.
Yeah, we want everybody else to have a part of the good life, to be able to feel the confidence that comes with making a decent living, and we want to pass that along and help the rest of the community out, Rick, AWPPW helps out here and there. They do all sorts of things like diaper drive recently, I think.
Yeah, they've worked on that. They contribute to the United Way, whether it's the active employees or the retired employees. We have our own little local, and in December, our retiree employees made contributions to the Meals on Wheels. And we made contributions to Salvation Army. So it's a continuing thing.
Right on.
Labor, working, or retired, we all still feel as strong that we need to be part of the community.
Well, through the employee and stuff down there, Emerald Performance, $15,000 is going to be raised this year for United Way.
Wow.
So,
As far as the Labor Council goes, the last few years around Christmas time, we've always made a donation. The last couple of years, we've done, I think, hams to CAP. I think we donated $1,000 every year to CAP. This year, we did $500 in hams for CAP for Christmas dinners, and $500 to Labor Community Services. We've also, brought on United Way and tried to get more involved with United Way. There's all sorts of ways that we try to help out here and there. I guess, I just want to thank you guys for being here, Rick and Dan. And if you want to visit us, our meetings are the second Monday of every month at 5:30 at 536 Oregon Way, It's the AWPPW Hall, IAM Hall, a couple other ones in there. And our meetings are open to any union members. Welcome to come and join us and sit down and participate and have a voice and let us know what's going on. You can also email us at cow.wa.clc@outlook.com. We're on Facebook. And just thank you.